And Bret Baier is indeed the chief political anchor for Fox News Channel. He's also the anchor of Special Report with Bret Baier. He's an author. He's written some books that are very interesting in regards to history, our country's history. And he's written another called 3 Days at the Brink. We think we've hooked up with Bret Baier this morning. Bret, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well.
First question is the most serious question. We Southerners are deeply disappointed at our Atlanta Braves not being in the World Series. And from what I understand, you're quite the Washington National fan. So I'm going to act like I'm congratulating you, but I don't mean a single word of it. We dominate the regular season. You guys end up in the World Series. Congratulations. I mean that.
Well, I tell you, I grew up a Braves fan. You know, I grew up in Atlanta. So when I moved to D.C., I decided I'd change colors and been a Nationals fan for some time. So this is pretty cool. We've had our disappointments. You guys have had a lot of bites at the apple. This is the first one for us. Well,
it should be a good series and a pitching-dominated series, I would imagine. Good pitching tends to get you to the postseason. I want to go back to the book you wrote. I read some of the excerpts of the book. I find it very interesting. I find it very inquisitive, but I find it very unusual. And the reason I find it unusual, because in the age and era of Trump, I would expect to read a book on the effect of Twitter, or is Trump crazy, or orange man bad dynamic. You've written a very serious book in a time that there seems to be an appetite for unserious politics. Am I crazy?
Well, no, you're not crazy. It's I tell my staff I'm one tweet away from changing our whole show, but it's a busy time, right? And it is kind of all over the map. One of the things that I think everybody, no matter where you come from ideologically, can agree with is that looking back at our past in America is important because we can learn from the past. A lot of times it's cyclical and things come back around. This moment in time is just really intriguing because at this moment in 1943, the Allied forces literally could have lost World War II. And Hitler was on the march in Europe. We had a couple of wins in the Pacific, but not anything. It was still shaky. And FDR, Churchill, and Stalin meet for the first time and plan the next steps in the war, and they end up planning D-Day, which obviously we now know changed the war and changed the world.
Brady, you mentioned Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, the 1943, Tehran conference. Why did they choose Iran to meet?
Stalin demanded it. He held the cards. They were trying to court Stalin to get into the war and his Red Army. And he chose the spot. They went back and forth and said, listen, that's really hard for us to do. We have constitutional governments, parliament, Congress. FDR is obviously paralyzed in a wheelchair. And Stalin demands that's where it's going to be. So it's 6,000 miles for FDR. He has this secret journey on the USS Iowa across U-boat-infested waters and eventually gets there. And that conference and the interpersonal dynamics, really the focus of the book, but I bounce back and look at how FDR gets to that moment.
Bret, I've always said that the world I live in was at the end of the day shaped by the outcome of World War II. Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, obviously prominent players in that endeavor. Was there ever a reason to believe that these three leaders were not going to be able to come to some mutual tact and strategy in dealing with Nazi Germany?
There was. FDR was fearful that Stalin, because he had lost more than 1 million people to Hitler in battles in the Soviet Union, that Stalin may punt and give up and sign with Hitler a non-aggression pact and go on his side. Had that happened, the Allies themselves could not have done what they did. And if D-Day, then called Operation Overlord, is not planned, they literally could lose the war, and in that case, we might all be speaking German.
Last question. You have unearthed some new details and rarely seen transcripts or histories declassified State Department of Presidential documents from the FDR Library. When somebody reads this book from a historical perspective, what do you hope they learn? What knowledge do you hope they gain as a result of reading your book?
Well, it's a great question. This is the third book in my presidential series. The first one I did was about Eisenhower, and that was the heat of the Cold War. The last one I did was about Reagan and his diplomacy with Mikhail Gorbachev. And this is about really FDR in this meeting, and it's the beginning of the Cold War. I think what you take away from it is, one, it's a narrative that's easy to read. It's real. It's our history. And three, the decisions that are made change the course of the world. Because FDR gave some things to Stalin and to try to get him on board, Stalin, after FDR dies, gets emboldened and takes over Eastern Europe. It's the beginning of the war, and it's a fascinating moment in history.
Brett, where can we find the book?
Well, every place books are sold. It's on, online, but if you want to just go to one stop, BretBaierWUC.com, it has all the list of booksellers, and you can just do it right there online. But you should be able to see it in the airport and every place starting tomorrow.
I want to give you a compliment, and then I'll let you go, and appreciate your time once again. As somebody who does 3 hours of political talk radio 5 days a week and has no journalistic integrity whatsoever, and really is not and not held responsible to that. I mean, in an era and age where we question everything that comes out of a member of the media's mouth, I have found you to be one of the most sincere and honest brokers on behalf of the public disseminating of information, and I applaud you for that, because it's crazy, it's chaotic. I guess we stir the pot on talk radio as much as anyone, but I have found you to be very sincere in your attempt to give a fair account.
Well, thank you very much. We're really trying every day, and if I can get to the end of my show and say, we did it the best we could and the most fair, that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you very much, Brett. Have a good day.
You too.